You have a really strong ability to take things that are happening in your life and turn them into great stories. How do you keep those stories relevant to somebody's business at the same time?
Whenever something happens in my life, I've trained my mind to think this is good content. I type out the story part and I tell it as quickly as possible. I tell it in headlines, right? That's how I coach my clients, is to tell your story in its headlines. I say don't bite the algorithm that feeds you. I say that a lot.
I love that.
On LinkedIn and really in all copywriting, you're really shooting for a third or fourth grade level. You're really shooting for jargon-less content that everybody can connect to and relate to. If I can figure out LinkedIn in the least cool categories that a person can exist in, anybody can.
All right, Holly. So, one of the things that really strikes me about your content is Story Sunday, right? And what I like about it is that you have a really strong ability to take things that are happening in your life and turn them into great stories.
Thank you.
So, how do you do that? And how do you keep those stories relevant to somebody's business at the same time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much. So, Story Sunday, let me tell you about the evolution of Story Sunday. So, when I first came to LinkedIn in 2021, I came as a book ghostwriter. And I was used to pretty much being able to write within the parameters of my clients' stories and within their voice, be able to have a lot of freedom in what I wrote. When I came to LinkedIn, I tried to write the same way in a literary style. And what I realized after two failed scales, quitting twice in 2 years of spinning my wheels on LinkedIn, is that there is a specific style on LinkedIn, and it's more copywriting than it is literary writing. There's a lot of marketing copy on LinkedIn. And so the challenge for me was adapting my literary style to a LinkedIn style and then still being able to tell stories through a copywriting dynamic. And so I started writing Story Sundays as an outlet, as like okay, I'm not going to be as boxed in as you need to be from a formatting standpoint, a content standpoint, an attachment standpoint. I'm just going to kind of let this be my outlet. I always say that LinkedIn is a lot like Target. You go into Target with a list, and then Target actually tells you what you want. And it's usually nothing on your list. You forget what was on your list in Target. And so LinkedIn's the same way. You can't just come onto LinkedIn, throw out some content, and expect the universe to respond. And so on Story Sunday, I allowed myself to write whatever I wanted, but I realized that I still needed to make it matter to my audience. And that's true in all storytelling. That's actually true in book writing. Every story you share needs to be rooted in a lesson, and maybe it's just rooted in encouragement or inspiration. And I think that's the challenge for most people telling stories on LinkedIn, is how do I tell a story and make it matter to the reader? And so Story Sunday sort of evolved as like my quiet little corner of rebellion into now it's something, and I've thought about getting rid of it, because I'm not as engaged on the weekend at all at this point on LinkedIn. But so many people say, I came to you, I saw the story about your dad you told one Sunday. I saw the story about your daughter from Story Sunday. I saw the story about your cats from Story Sunday. And so more than any other post I do, that's the one I get the most feedback on. And so I paid attention to that, which is another important skill on LinkedIn, is to pay attention to what's getting more traction, even if you don't think it has as much value. I was surprised by how many people came to me through the Story Sunday post. And so whenever I'm writing one of these stories, let me back up. Whenever something happens in my life, I've trained my mind to think this is good content. Like, this is heartbreaking, this is embarrassing, this is hilarious, this would make great content. And so I've made a habit of typing out just some short caption that would remind me of that story. And so I I am always on the notes app of my phone. That's really how I run my life and business, but it's a very, very unsexy tech stack, but it works. So I keep track of those stories and I sit down to write them, and the filter is who cares? Who cares? So I type out the story part, and I do keep it within the parameters, generally speaking, of the LinkedIn aesthetic, in terms of lots of white space, only necessary words, copywriting esque. But at the end of the story, and I tell it as quickly as possible, I tell it in headlines, right? That's how I coach my clients, is to tell your story in its headlines and maybe even its subtitles, but never delve into the copy of your story, if you were thinking about it as as if it were a news article. So I tell it in headlines, and at the end of the story, I say, "Who cares? Who cares about this? Who could this matter to? Who could this encourage? What lesson can be learned from it?" And some of the lessons do feel like a pivot, but it's up to the writer to make sense. For instance, I tell the story all the time about those kiosk guys at the mall. You know, the people and gals, there's gals as well, kiosk guys and gals. They're in the middle, like the indoor mall people. Back when people went to indoor malls, Danny, like when we were growing up as 80s babies and 90s kids. So the people at the kiosk, they will just approach you at the mall and almost assault you with their products, like start like straightening your hair, telling you that your hands look old and that you need skin cream. And I'm like, all of this is accurate, but this is not a good sales technique. So I was at the mall. I was, accosted by one of these kind people who are really just trying to make a living, but it's such an intrusive experience, and I related that to how it feels in DMs when people are just straight pitch slapping you at off the first message. And so it does feel like a pivot from a mall kiosk person to someone in DMs who has been untrained in how to build relationships before they sell. But I'm constantly thinking through that filter, and because I keep track of these stories just by jotting down something that will make me remember the story, I have time in between. I have time in between to figure out some sort of connection to either LinkedIn, a pain point of my audience, or just a common human experience, which most of our stories could illustrate a lot of common human experiences like pain, suffering, um, delayed gratification, all of those things you can use as a point or a lesson, when it comes to these little stories that are seemingly innocuous, seemingly meaningless, you can give them meaning by applying a lesson to them. I love writing Story Sunday again. I got kind of burned out on it, but I just keep getting so much feedback from people saying, "Hey, I really like that story that you shared." And it's just reinforcement of what we already know, Danny, which are stories connect us, stories sell. Stories help people feel less isolated, brings them out of isolation and invites them into community. And I think that's an overlooked aspect of story is how unifying they are. It's not just, oh, stories are more entertaining. It's something that you're making your audience feel. And it's almost always, I can relate to that. I aspire to that, or I feel encouraged by that. Right. And so you're really tapping into emotion when you tell stories.
Beautiful. I love it. Okay. So obviously, you've written books and you've helped people write books. So does that actually make it more difficult when it comes to you having to adapt to writing on LinkedIn, or does it make it a little bit easier? And where are the parallels in
Yep.
writing a book for somebody versus writing on LinkedIn?
So that's such a great question. And it's one that no one ever asks me. I think there are positives and negatives. I think the positives are obvious. I write words all day long and have done that for 19 years. And because of that, I'm better at writing words than I was when I first started when I was 21, when I got my first paid writing gig. And so now that I'm in my 40s, I've been doing it half my life, all of my career. So of course, it's going to come easily to put words together, and my mind is trained to think in stories and to think in delivering stories and storytelling. And so that does help that my mind is trained to think in terms of like potential content ideas. But I think where it has limited me is LinkedIn writing is not literary writing. LinkedIn writing is marketing copywriting for the most part. And you have to learn how to tell stories within the parameters of what's generally accepted and read on LinkedIn. The data tells us that about 83% of our readers are skimming. And if I were to write in a literary style and a reader's only reading one out of every 6 to 10 words, you have very very few words that they're actually clinging onto, which is what makes the aesthetic of the white space and lots of separated paragraphs. That's what makes that so attractive to LinkedIn. I explain it to my clients like, think of your post as a ladder, and anytime there's white space, you're creating rungs, visual rungs for the reader's attention and eyes to hang on to, and then they move down to the next rung, and that's what keeps them more engaged, makes them less likely to skim. But, if I were to write in a literary style, I mean, I did for 2 years and I sucked at LinkedIn. So, that's what happened when I tried to take my book writing skills and apply them to LinkedIn. Frankly, Danny, I was so arrogant when I came to LinkedIn. I thought, I'm a professional writer and I'm not doing well at all. Like, I know I'm a decent writer. I can string a sentence together. Why am I losing? And I would judge people who at that time I perceived as having amateurish writing, really low level words. If you're talking about a Lexile score, like on a third, fourth grade level, I would be like, these people are not even using fancy words. These people are not even, you know, saying this as beautifully as I could say it. And what I failed to understand and appreciate is that on LinkedIn and really in all copywriting, you're really shooting for a third or fourth grade level. You're really shooting for jargon-less content that everybody can connect to and relate to. And the more smart you try to look and the more fancy or sophisticated you try to jazz up a sentence using $20 words in a lot of industry specific language, the less likely you are to connect to another human being. And so I sat in judgment of others for 2 long years, and that jealousy and judgment got me absolutely nowhere. And it wasn't until I started getting curious, instead of being judgmental, I had my mind shift had to change to judgmental and, "Oh, only this type of people only these type of people went on LinkedIn." So it was like the digital nomads, the single people, the people without kids, the young people, like only they went on LinkedIn. And those were really excuses I made that kept me stuck. And I'm talking 2 solid years of posting like, I know this is good writing. I'm just going to keep going, which is so dumb. It's the literal definition of insanity. And then when I finally got over myself and started posting pictures of myself, pictures that include people do 30% better on LinkedIn than any other post attachment. And people and pictures of people who are posting pictures of yourself, they can increase the reach of your post by as much as 50%. And here's why: people connect with people, especially today, especially with AI, especially with people working from home and everything being Zoom and remote. People are starving for connection like never before, and that's why photos of yourself do better, and I fought it for 2 years saying, "I'm not going to stoop down to their level." No, they're connecting with their audience in ways that I wasn't willing to because of my pride and because of my ego. So it wasn't until I swallowed that pride and started getting curious, like, why him? Why her? And instead it became, why them? And then the important shift, well, why not me? And I encourage everybody listening to ask themselves that question. I am a 41-year-old cat lady with 3 kids. I was divorced for 8 years, so I was a single mom for a long time. If I can figure out LinkedIn in the least cool categories that a person can exist in, anybody can. Anybody can.
I love it. So you've grown like really fast, right? For as far as most people's standards, right?
Sure.
So what do you attribute like the speed of growth to as far as yourself on LinkedIn?
So, like most people, that quick success really took 4 years to get where I am. 2 years of scaling incorrectly, non-systematically, judgmentally. So 2 years of showing up and backing up, showing up and backing up. I call it building a lot of half bridges. I built a ton of half bridges in 2021 and 2022 on
Ah, you posted
LinkedIn.
about that today.
I did, yes, my half bridges. So I speak from experience. 90% of my posts are like, "I did this wrong, so let me save you some time." So I built a ton of half bridges, and it wasn't until I committed in 2023 to understanding the LinkedIn algorithm, not to obey it, but to become aware of it and to sort of bend bend my strategies around the algorithm in as much as it felt like me. Um, Always never willing to sacrifice the true part of my brand and who I really am for the sake of the algorithm. Like, I'm not gonna come up with a bunch of what I call candy cane posts because I think they'll go viral. I just can't force myself to do it. So that's what I mean by bending myself to the algorithm as much as I'm willing to, um, in terms of who I am and what my brand is about. But so that took 2 years, 2 years of just trial and error,
So what you're saying though is
error.
that you could have gone even faster,
Yes,
but you didn't wanna sacrifice who you are to go faster.
that's right. So I knew it was going to be a much longer grind, and that's actually I did a bunch of research. I took 6 months off. I did so much research. I studied creators like Matt Barker, Justin Welsh, Matt Gray, Luke Matthews, Lyra, Jay, all the big names who you just had on this same podcast. So I went and I didn't study what they were doing now because that is a very common misconception and a very common practice is to look at what the biggest people are doing right now and to imitate it. What I did instead was I looked at what they did over scale and what they posted about. So I got all their content buckets narrowed down to about 5 things they all posted about, how often they posted, how often they commented. I read all of their content. I distilled it down. I'm a big nerd. So I did all of this research and I was like, okay, I need these 6 systems if I want to grow and grow well. I never wanted to do a follower race or anything like that. I'm good friends with Luke Matthews, and he will say that he did that follower race. Like they had a race to 100,000 followers. He and Matt Barker, and he would say, "I wish I hadn't done it because that did nothing for my bottom line." Right? He says he
Right.
wish he hadn't done it. So I was learning from other people's mistakes, and again, that took humility instead of sitting in judgment of these guys. And I think a lot of people come across profiles like Luke's, and their first reaction is judgment or is, this person's not like me, so there's nothing I can learn from them when that is completely false. So I think a lot of it had to do with openness. A lot of my growth had to do with being really open to people who weren't like me and didn't think like me. But also I understood that if I chose the road of organic growth, that I had to commit to building a very full long bridge between where I was and where I wanted to be in my business. And building the bridge of LinkedIn fully, you're not in it for 90 days, you're not in it for 6 months. You have to think in terms of a year. Can you build a business faster? Yes. But can you build a business sustainably and make it part of your everyday systems? That's going to take way more time because I'm only willing to spend an hour to 2 hours on LinkedIn a day, depending on my margin. I'm not willing to spend 8 hours a day. I'm not willing to pay someone to comment for me, comment as me. I'm not willing to have someone do my DMs. I'm not willing to have someone ghostwrite my posts. I'm not willing to use straight AI for my posts. So there's a lot of like deal breakers, which made me understand it was going to take some time. But I think people responded to that more so than buying followers or having someone comment as me. And that's probably been one of the biggest temptations. And one of the biggest temptations as a LinkedIn ghostwriter is to provide that service for my clients because many ghostwriters do. But I can't, in good conscience, recommend that to anyone because comments are really where the relationships are made and where my business was built and where I grew the most. It was through strategic commenting, authentic commenting, and responding to comments that I think I have found the most growth.
Yo, yo, I just wanted to take a very quick break in the action here because I just realized something crazy. 85% of the people that are watching our videos on YouTube are not subscribed. This is what happens when you actually get smart people to look into your analytics. So if you are enjoying this content and you want more practical advice and tips on how to grow your brand and your business with video, please hit the subscribe button. I do truly appreciate it. Secondly, if you are a founder and expert who really understands how important video is to grow your business, but you don't have time to mess around with cameras, write scripts, do video editing, or blow your entire budget on a fancy film crew, that's exactly what we help with at Video on Easy Mode. You are literally watching how it works in this episode right now. We make it easy to create high quality, natural video content to help you grow your business and grow your brand without leaving the comfort of your home or office. So if this sounds like something that your business can use right now, either scan the QR code or hit the link in the description. It's all remote. All you got to do is show up to a virtual studio, hang out with me for about an hour, and you're going to get a month's worth of videos. And let's get back into the interview. That's really interesting. And I know that you are a big proponent of comments. And I was always a big proponent of comments too. And every day I struggle more
Mhm.
and more
Mhm.
with being a proponent of comments. Like
Mhm.
I'm getting to the point where I'm just like, I don't know if commenting is even fucking valuable anymore. I'm
I think
really questioning it. Like, there are so many people that either it's just an AI generated comment, or it is a comment that is there because they want to basically use whatever small influence I have to put themselves out there. There's no added benefit for my audience. And I'm just like getting super frustrated with commenting. So give me your thoughts about, is it the same as it was 1 year ago? And how do I get past the fact that I'm in this mindset right now?
so. I think there's a few answers. I think commenting is always going to be it's always going to hold a lot of algorithmic value because of what LinkedIn values and prioritizes. LinkedIn values and prioritizes generous community members. And the most generous thing you can do on LinkedIn is comment on someone's post. You can also repost for them. But comments have more intrinsic algorithmic value if you look at the math than anything else on LinkedIn. Sending and receiving and creating conversation threads. So, understanding that is probably step 1, but you will burn out if that's the only reason you're doing comments, especially as leads start coming in. What I've done, and this is new over the last few months, I've really elevated my comment strategy. This is going to sound confusing, and you don't have to start off this detailed, but I am an insane person who enjoys discipline. And so the way I view comments is it's a discipline. So I have lists A, B, and C, and I have their links in this list. And this list lives in the notes app on my phone. It's 3 different notes and you're on that list. And it's literally the person's LinkedIn handle. List A are the people I comment on every single day. This includes clients, people in my masterclass, and then homies, OGs who I know have my back and who I know support me, people like you. And so that's on list A, and they get a comment every single day, no matter what. People on list B are people who I've worked with in the past, people who will sometimes give me support and comment, people who have graduated my master class. Those are people who I get to about every other day or every third day. Then people on list C, they're the people I wanna work with, right? People that I've identified as, "Hey, this person fits the profile for a lot of people I found success with as a ghostwriter, so I wanna leave them love several times a week, 2 to 3 times a week." And I also use that list for DMs as well. And so I have list A, list B, list C, and when I finish list A, I go to list B, I knock out people every 2 or every 3 people on that list, and then list C, I try to knock out everybody on that list every day, but it depends where I am in the sales cycle with them. If I'm trying to, like, give them some space because maybe a DM landed flat or something, so I really make a judgment call on how often I comment from list C. But I keep a list, and it just becomes a discipline, and it doesn't feel as aimless, and it feels incredibly strategic. Then I move to my profile viewers, right? Somebody who's viewed my profile who I've never seen view my profile or engage, I'll shoot them a DM and I'll leave them a comment. "Hey, thanks for stopping by. I'm gonna support your post. You came by my profile today. Let me know if you have any questions about LinkedIn. Happy Wednesday." And then I always respond to all of my own comments. I try to respond to 100% of them, which is also insane. But that's where you start. If you're listening to this and you're just starting on LinkedIn, you absolutely must respond to the comments on your own post. I believe it's up to 30 comments will give you algorithmic value responding to 30 comments. And then after that, it's sort of a negligible amount. So you see these big creators getting like 1,000 comments. After 30 of those, it really doesn't matter to the algorithm anymore. I would encourage you, if you're listening, to get in front of someone or get in front of some real data that was developed by a third party, not LinkedIn, and look at the numbers. That also helps you justify some of your actions on LinkedIn because you know it's turning a dial even if it's not in real time. So, Danny, honestly, I turn off the part of my brain that cares for some of it, right? That is part of business. That is part of business is understanding that not all of it is super fun and not all of it is about me or what I enjoy. it creates a life that I love and a freedom that I love, and hanging on to that purpose. In my master class, the very first thing I teach is that people have to hang on to purpose on LinkedIn, what it's doing for your business and your name and your brand long term, because I log on often and think, this is the last thing I feel like doing today is engaging with AI content or engaging with AI comments or getting 37 pitch slaps or getting even worse offers in my DMs for a service that I offer. Like, do you need help with your LinkedIn content? No, Barbara, frankly, I don't need help with my LinkedIn content because that's exactly what I do for a living. But and I think there is a little bit of understanding the bigger picture and understanding the bigger picture and what your comments are contributing to. Every comment can shape your brand. Every comment can shape someone's perception. And this is so cheesy, but your comments really can help people and really can improve someone's day, improve their life. And I only this is probably not maxing out my potential in comments, but I won't comment on bad content. If it's bad, I'm not gonna leave you a comment and say, "This was great." If it's ostensibly AI, I'm not gonna comment. If you leave an AI comment on my profile, I'm gonna respond, but I'm gonna call you out for using AI. One of my favorite people, I'm not gonna name him, but one of my favorite people on all of LinkedIn, how we got so close is I could tell he was copy and pasting comments, right? Which is one strategy that a lot of people use. And it had nothing to do with my post. And he did it like 2 weeks in a row. And finally, I just said, if you're going to copy and paste the same comment every single day, here, let me do you a favor. You can use the first comment. Just don't even change it. Don't even change it from the first time you commented. Just go through all my posts and leave the same exact comment. I don't care. And he laughed and we became friends. And now he does not do that anymore. And he scaled LinkedIn tremendously, and he's doing a great job. He does content for podcasts. He's a great human being. But I think part of it is understanding the grind of business, that not everything is about me or what I feel like doing that day. And really going back to purpose. Why am I on LinkedIn? Why am I here? What kind of life is this creating for myself and my family? And what would I be willing to do to sustain and grow that life, and having a system so it doesn't feel so pointless, because systems do bring meaning to action because you know there's a measurable outcome, right? You know there's list A, these are my homies. You're not randomly clicking. I never make it to my feed. Never, never make it to my feed. Every comment that I leave is intentional on LinkedIn, and I think that has a ton to do with it. How long did it take me to build these lists? List A and B, super simple, because you move people from list A to list B, and then you move people from list C to list A, and then they eventually move to list B. So these lists move among each other. It's not that much work. It's copy and pasting a link in the Notes app. So I think a lot of people hear about making lists and they think it involves a 72 tab Notion or like Excel spreadsheet. It does not. I have the lowest, least sexy tech stack of anybody on LinkedIn, and it works because it works for me. So it's figuring out what works for you that will keep you on track, keep you disciplined, keep you commenting quickly. And then it's clicking the X at 9:15. That for me, that's when I get off LinkedIn and I don't let myself get back on for most of the day, depending on my calls. It's not hopping on and off all day long unless somebody has sent me a message and I know it's waiting on me. A lot of it is having the power to click the X and let go of control for a few hours. That has a lot to do with it too.
That's really important too, because, I'll find myself going back in and being like, oh, I didn't get a lot of comments right away. So let me go back and respond to the ones that I got that came in like an hour later. And I'm just like, this whole thing's so frustrating. But um,
I
I,
do the
I
same
like
thing.
the way how strategic you do it. Right. Like, I mean, I do have my version of what you do. I have lists. I got my homies list, and then I have my prospects list, and I have
Yeah.
some like my scouting list, right? So, um, but I feel like you definitely have like a very good strategy behind it, and you're probably not letting it get to you as much as it's getting to me. One of the things that just gets to me is I'm just tired of everyone just agreeing with me all the time. It's like, can you just like maybe maybe at some point say, "Hey, I don't agree with something that you said here." And like you've done it in my comments and I've done it for you. And
Yep.
like I would so much rather somebody like disagree and dialogue with me than just like regurgitate and tell me like how great my ideas are at all times. I'm just like, that's what I think really frustrates me.
You should do a post about that because I think people live under the impression that that's what comments are about. They're about agreeing with or supporting the author. And there are ways to dissent that are respectful and add to the conversation,
Totally.
which right, and you and I have both sort of had different positions, like you mentioned, on each other's posts, and we're still homies, we're still list A for each other. So, um, I think setting people free from that misconception would be a great post for you. I have people disagree with me a lot, but I think it's mostly because and I'm not even I wouldn't consider myself a feminist. It's certainly not by modern day terms, but I think it's because 'cause I'm a woman. I have a lot of men talk about women on LinkedIn only being successful because they post selfies. And I used to go back and forth with these people, and then I realized that I cannot allow myself my day to be made or destroyed by someone in my comments, and so I'm gonna give you that same advice.
Yeah, I got you.
But
No, I don't like I don't allow it to like ruin my day. That's for sure. But I'm just like
it does get old. It
what I
just feels
do is
like yeah.
I start questioning whether it's worth my time because I'm like, there are days where I kind of take it easy and don't do nearly as much. And I don't see any difference in the post reach and stuff like that. So I'm just like, and I'm almost like, I've been experimenting with that this week. Like I have not replied to a lot of my comments this week. And I'm like, are my posts still going to get pushed out if I don't reply to my comments? And so anybody that is hitting me up this week, it's an experiment. All right. Like hang tight with me. I'm not, I'm still a good guy. I'm going to get back to you, but I'm giving it a little time just to test this out. But
And I think it's smart to test. I think once you've gotten to a certain level where you are, what the data shows us is that you've built to a level. Think of it as a video game. Like
right.
all of us start out on level 1 and we're trying to get to level 10. And you've reached a certain level and you won't go beneath it, but you won't rise above it if you don't continue to create algorithmic value. And so what you're creating for yourself is a plateau. If you're happy with where your leads are, if you're happy with how things are going with your brand and business, plateauing is fine. How long you can ride that plateau out before you do level down, I do not know. I have taken 2 full weeks off of LinkedIn and come back and have been totally fine. And so if you think of it like a video game, pulling back from comments for a time is not going to kill you because you are at level 5 and you will stay at level 5. You won't go down to level 4, but you may never get to level 6 if you don't come back and start rebuilding your algorithmic value. But I think deciding how much time you're willing to give it and I click the X every single day no matter what at 9:15 because I almost always have a 9:30 call, almost always, but I click the X. I don't just minimize it, I only have it on my desktop. There are parameters I put around my and boundaries that I put around my use of LinkedIn because I don't want it to become something that I despise because it's given me so much. I say, "Don't bite the algorithm that feeds you." I say
That's a
that a
really
lot.
I love that.
It's given me so much, and I don't wanna lose sight of it because I'm misusing it, and I'm giving it a place in my life and heart that a social media platform does not belong, right? So, I think it's committing to maybe, Danny, it's for the next month, you only do 30 minutes. The first 30 minutes of the golden hour matter more than the last 30 minutes. But collectively, the 60 minutes matter more than any other minutes of the day. And so, giving yourself a timer I tell my clients who are super busy I say, if all you can give it is 15 minutes, give it 15 minutes. Because what I know is that when people see the value and the results, they'll have time for 30 minutes, they'll have time for 45 minutes and an hour. But in reality, I only do three true golden hours a week now. And that's been my practice for the last 2 years. I run carpool on Thursday, Friday. I never have a spare hour Saturday and Sunday. So I'm popping on when I can but if I can get that first 15 to 30 minutes, it makes an incredible difference.
Beautiful. I like it. All right. So I'm gonna do like a couple of really quick, like rapid fire buy
Oh, I
or
love
sell
these.
kind of things. All right.
Okay.
And then we'll finish up.
All right.
So video.
Bye.
Why?
there's a feed in the mobile app, LinkedIn has committed, so we need to commit to.
Okay, beautiful. What are your give me a little bit more on like what's your strategy for video and how do you treat a video post differently than you treat a written post for yourself?
I'm gonna be different in responding to this than most people because my video posts do the exact same as my picture posts or as my infographic posts. All of my posts perform about the same when it comes to all of my attachments. When you look at the raw data for all of my post attachments, the reason I do video, I do 2 a week. I sit down every Friday morning. I plan for 1 hour every Friday to get 2 videos filmed. I send it to an editor. He sends it back to me before the next Sunday, and I schedule 2 videos a week. The reason I do this is not just because LinkedIn has created a video piece to their mobile app, but I do it because my audience members, some of them learn better over video. And so I'm giving every learning type, every content absorption type, I'm giving all of them an option during the week to connect to my content in a way that makes sense to them. And so
Beautiful.
when you think about it, I have an education background. I was a high school English teacher for 1 year. That's all I lasted. Teachers are heroes. But I took a lot of classes on learning styles and understanding that not everybody in your audience is going to connect to a photo of you or is going to connect to an infographic. Some of them will best connect to your video content. And so I book in my week. I do a video Monday, I do a video on Friday, and they perform the best, but I do it because it's what serves my audience best, even more so than LinkedIn prioritizing it.
Okay, beautiful. All right. Buy or sell, brand partnerships.
Rent. So I've been approached by so many brands, and I feel incredibly lucky and incredibly blessed to be among a group of people who are considered brand ambassadors, but you have to be careful. A lot of these brands only want to partner with you on a commission basis, and that's way too much pressure on me and my posts because I'm trying to sell me 7 days a week. I can't be worried about selling another brand any day of the week. So the way I approach brand partnerships is when a brand approaches me, if they ask me to test their app and I've never heard of it, it's a no because I don't have time to vet, I don't have time to get on and look, and I'm not going to recommend anything that I don't know how to use. And I'm not gonna recommend competing brands, right? So when I give a yes, it has to be a hard yes, and I have to and they have to agree to a longer term partnership with me because 'cause I'm not gonna, hop brand to brand to brand. I'm not gonna push at 5 different video editing platforms in 1 year. That would make me lose credibility quickly. So, if a brand approaches me, I have to either have already used them before, be using them currently, or know a lot about them to even say yes. And I don't do commission based because I don't wanna share a link and hope that you click it unless it's mine.
Mhm,
The
I love
only
it.
links
Okay,
that I want you to click are mine.
beautiful. All right, AI.
Buy. If you
How
don't
do you use
buy
it? How do you use it effectively for what you do? Because again, as somebody who is a creative writer, how are you using it?
100% its best use is ideation. And there's a lot of different AI platforms. The very best, in my opinion, and I don't get paid to tell you this, is Magic Post. It has the most functionality in with the least AI tells, with the fewest AI sort of weaknesses. So if you absolutely have to use it for post creation, at which point you still have to edit, that's a great platform to use for post creation. But if you're using AI for ideation, you can really use the free version of any AI. I use it for titling books. I use it for book chapter titles. I use it for hook ideas. I use it for word substitution. I use it to understand audience pain points. I use it to think for me when I don't feel like thinking, but I never use it to write for me when I don't feel like writing. And that's the best use of AI, in my opinion.
Ooh, I like it. Okay, one more. Lead magnets.
They have to be valuable. If your lead magnet is 10 ways to become a better leader and one of them is meditation and if it's something that people can get on Google, it's a week lead magnet and it's a waste. And I think people are becoming very suspicious of lead magnets and they're becoming very leery about giving out their emails, and they should be. I created a non-newsletter. It's basically a weekly lead magnet. And so instead of creating a one-off lead magnet, I think I wrote when I first sat down like 26 because I wanted to get over half a year done. I send out once a week, and it's just an expansion of a current LinkedIn post, but there is a downloadable resource in every single issue that people can download. Some of them are templates, some of them are questions, some of them are kind of worksheet-esque to help you think through your branding, but all of them will help you become better on LinkedIn. So I didn't wanna do a newsletter, and I didn't wanna do a lead magnet, so I combined those 2 ideas, and it's the non-newsletter, lead magnet that I use on my
That's
profile.
gangsta. I like that.
Thank you.
All right. Holly, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you as always. Where can
Thanks,
people
Danny
find you?
boy. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn as Holly Crawshaw, and soon that's going to be Holly Crawshaw Joiner. I have legally changed my name, and I gotta make it LinkedIn official soon. So, Holly Crawshaw Joiner coming to a LinkedIn profile near you.
Well, congratulations and good luck at the competition this weekend for
Thanks,
your
Danny
daughter.
boy. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. You're so wonderful. You're so gracious. I really appreciate you making this work.
Of course, you got it.